Hello there everyone, we're here once again for another end of the year-esque video. This will be the last one I put out, not including the things I didn't review video. I'm gonna plan to try and release that on the 1st of January next year, 2023. And as you see from this title, I'm going to be talking about my 10 favorite movies of 2022, what I thought were the best to come out this year. If you somehow missed it, I did just released my top 10 albums of 2022 right before this one, so it'd be easy to miss. I released them right back to back, right next to each other, so feel free to go check that one out whenever you get the chance if you want to. And then this one, I'm going to take on the exact same structure. I'm going to talk about a few other things before I actually get to the top movies of this year, in my opinion. Before I get to my honorable mentions, I first want to discuss a few of my least favorite movies of this year. So here we go. Black Adam, I did a review for this movie a couple months ago. Just very relentlessly uninteresting, unoriginal, and underwhelming in almost every aspect of it. I did like some of the chemistry amongst the main crew of heroes, their sort of group that is formed with them, but I thought The Rock seriously underperformed here as Black Adam. A lot of the action scenes and visual effects as well were pretty underwhelming. A lot of this just missed the boat for me. Halloween Ends, as if I thought the franchise couldn't get any worse, it did. The last one I thought was really weak, and this to me was even worse. I will say I do think there is a pretty good conclusion between Laurie and Michael, those two characters. I mean, weird burp slash hiccups going on, but my praises honestly kind of ends there. There's really not much else I can say I liked about this movie. The Road Treatment, this was a movie released on Netflix earlier this year. I just couldn't stand how freaking cheesy and glossy and shiny this movie was. It really is, in my opinion, just a disgrace to the romantic comedy genre, as I think this genre has produced some great films over the years, and this is just a disservice to everything that style stands for, I think. Next, I want to mention my favorite television series this year. For me, it was definitely Ozark Season 4. This came out on Netflix. The entire show came out on Netflix, but you know what I mean. Excellent ending to the series. Really enjoyed it. Both parts, I would say, probably liked part 1 a tad bit more than part 2, but loved the conclusion for the show. I do still prefer season 3 a little bit more than this. I think that is probably my favorite season in the show, but very happy with how things ended with the final episode. Thought it was all done very well. And I also just want to give a shout out to my favorites. I don't know what I would call this, like documentary slash special TV. Like, it's not a proper film, but it's also not a proper television show kind of thing. For me, I'm just gonna talk about Legacy, the true story of the LA Lakers, which I think you could classify as a TV documentary special kind of thing. Either way, I thought this was a great watch. You know, I've mentioned before, I'm a big Laker fan. My Lakers aren't doing so hot right now, so it's nice to just look back on the glory years, all the championship years, seeing the players and coaching staff that contributed to this thing and gave interviews for it. I enjoyed hearing from all these people. I'll just go into my honorable mentions now. These are the films that just missed the top 10 for me. The first one is X, one of the more fun horror movies. There is something funny about just it being set late 70s. It's porn industry is starting to take over, seeing these guys come together just to make these pornos in the setting that they're in. It's oddly humorous, and just how kind of unaware and, quite frankly, dumb these characters are. That did lead to some of my issues with the film. I did not like the way it concluded as well, but I thought there was some great acting here. I did like the characters. Each one of them did have something distinct about them and a unique personality to them. Great gore as well. Overall, still a very enjoyable film. Till, one of the harder, tougher watches, I think, out of all movies I saw in cinema this year. Surprised it did not get any big award nominations, but some terrific acting here. I like the way they handled the story of Emmett Till. They struck a good middle ground, I think, between showing things that happened and not necessarily sugarcoating everything, but also not showing too much to the point where it would maybe become sickening for some people, because if you don't know the story of Emmett Till, it's just really horrible what happened to him. So I just like the way that they handled it overall. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I think this is actually an improvement upon the 2016 original film. I get some of the complaints for this thing, you know, some of the characters that had very little involvement were kind of just brushed off to the side, almost quite literally in some cases. But I love Sam Raimi's horror tinged direction that he took these characters in here, and I just like where the film leaves off, because it kind of opens some doors for different things that could happen with some characters, which is a vague way to put it, but if you've seen the movie, I hope you know what I mean. Barbarian, one of the most shocking and just all over the place theater experiences I've had, not necessarily with what happened in the theater, but just going there and experiencing this movie. It is insane, some of the things that happen in here. Go watch it if you haven't. That's all I'm going to say. Lastly, I do want to mention Jackass Forever. I saw this at the beginning of this year, actually, and just a very fun time. You know, it's a simple structure, just all these different stunts that the Jackass crew attempts, but it's just a whole lot of fun. Some really good cameos as well that I was not expecting, and, you know, certainly as a man with male genitals, it was definitely hard to watch at times, but I also couldn't look away for some reason, so there's something to be said about that. Without any further ado, let's just go ahead and get into my top 10, starting with number 10. Kimi is a movie I think really kind of slid under people's radar. It did come out at the beginning of this year. It was directed by Steven Soderbergh, starring Zoe Kravitz. So I mean, some big names here. I don't know why this really didn't get a whole lot of recognition, but one of the more unique movies I saw this year, for those of you who don't know, it takes place during the pandemic, 2020, kind of the midst of all the COVID stuff, and it does use that setting very prominently. I enjoyed the subtlety of this movie, especially with the score. There were certain scenes I remember that should feel very intense and very nerve-wracking, but then the score lends it to this feeling of mystery and almost a whodunit kind of scenario. Great lead performance by Zoe Kravitz, a great premise and mystery actually that is involved with the film as well, that I think is really good and does lead to some very intense moments. Overall, just a very engaging experience. Somebody. When I heard there was another Puss in Boots movie coming out, I was just confused. I thought they were kind of done with this. You know, I had heard rumors of another Shrek movie coming out, and I guess this is actually what it turned out to be. I really don't know. I haven't looked into it more. But honestly, I'm glad that this came out, because this, I think, is easily the best Shrek installment since Shrek 2. And maybe this is a hot take, but I think this is the best portrayal of Puss in Boots that we've ever seen. It's such a good character study of Puss in Boots and where he is in his life. For anyone unfamiliar, the hook of this movie is that he's on his last life now, and there's this great dilemma of whether or not he should just continue being the same Puss in Boots that he has always been, you know, laughing in the face of death, which is like a big thing that he says, but he also doesn't know if he should just sort of retire the whole shtick and just kind of, you know, lay low and live out the rest of his last life as much as he can, away from all the danger. And I was just really pleasantly surprised with the film going in that direction for our main character, who I think is voiced once again greatly by Antonio Banderas. I liked Salma Hayek returning as Kitty Softpaws. I really like the character Perrito. He's a therapy dog in this film. I thought he was really fun and funny. Amazing animation too, kind of borrowing some of the rotoscope style animation we saw in like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and some surprisingly dark moments too, like really truly probably scary for some children who might go see this. I never thought I would say this, but this new Puss in Boots movie is truly epic. I recommend it. Nope, Jordan Peele's latest directed film, and probably his most divisive. I remember hearing a lot of praise for this movie, but also a lot of people that didn't really get it and weren't as into it, which I do get personally. But I was into it. I dug it. I really enjoyed what Peele did here. Not only with the main antagonist of the film that I won't spoil, even though I did kind of actually spoil it in my review, so I apologize to anyone that saw that video before seeing the movie. Sorry if I kind of ruined things for you. But the themes and the social commentary relating to spectacle and this obsession with spectacle, I thought was greatly explored here. Some really good acting, good comedy as well, once again, like all his other films that he's made. It's serious, it's dramatic at times, but also knows the appropriate times when to pull back from that and be a little bit more lighthearted.
I never met nobody like you.
Turning Red was yet another great Pixar movie that I thought didn't look good but ended up being great, and I shouldn't have been surprised because that's typically how it goes with Pixar. They don't do a very good job at marketing their films, but they turn out good a lot of the time. Sure, it gets a little bit predictable at times, but once again, they have created such a visual feast for the eyes. I enjoyed the family dynamic a lot. The representation of the culture of our main characters, I think, is beautifully explored. And just the message of not being ashamed of who you are and of your body image, though maybe a bit predictable, and you can kind of see that coming, I think is a really important thing to talk about, and I'm glad that they touched on that. Also, in my opinion, brought out one of Adam Sandler's best performances of his entire career. It really checks all the boxes for the stereotypical sports drama, and I don't mean that in a bad way, by the way, because these movies are all a bit formulaic. So if anything, you are actually doing somewhat of a service, I think, if you're following the formula of these kinds of movies, and I think for the most part it does it very well here. I enjoyed, surprisingly, a lot of the acting from the actual basketball players who aren't actors. I thought a lot of them did really well, and it was just an enjoyable movie watching Sandler's character helping this guy become a better player and trying to get him into the NBA, but also learning more through this process, and eventually, where he ends up in his career, which they show at the end of the movie. Very heartwarming and touching stuff. The Menu was simultaneously one of the most satisfying and disturbing films that I saw all year, with some of the people in this group that are, tasting the food that this chef has curated and put together, are being so involved and engulfed in the food culture and food tasting culture especially, and how that contrasts with some of the other people in the group that don't care as much and are there kind of just have to have a good time to be a part of the event. And seeing where this movie goes from scene to scene, from course to course, if you will, was quite something. It was very unpredictable. It was very funny at times, scary at times, unsettling at times. Really quite the journey watching this movie. The Batman for me lived up to the hype. I just remember the anticipation leading up to this movie, seeing a couple of the trailers, and just being glad that it was seemingly going in a much darker direction than really any other superhero movie that had come out recently. And I think that was what the superhero genre really just desperately needed in a time of all these other comic book movies that are so comical and lighthearted, and some of them were good, but some of them just being too much and too reliant on humor. And this one finally seemed like it was going in a darker and grittier direction from the looks of things, and it did. It most certainly did. I love The Batman. I really wasn't bored at all during its nearly 3-hour runtime. I'm glad it was that long because I just had such a great time sitting there that long watching this thing. I was very happy with all the new actors that came on to play these characters. Of course, I have to mention Robert Pattinson as Batman himself. I thought he did a very good job. I don't know if he's my favorite Batman, but I just liked his take on Batman and on Bruce Wayne, and how they're basically the same person, and there really isn't a defining difference between those two yet. It's really fascinating, honestly, and I'm excited to see what else is done with his portrayal as that character, if there is anything new to come in the future. Also cool seeing him being more of a detective in this one than in previous films, being more involved with these mysteries and crimes, kind of harkening back to Batman the Animated Series in that way. I feel like I was kind of the exact target audience for The Fabelmans. I mentioned in my review that directing films is not an aspiration that I have, at least at the moment, but I related so much to the character of Sam Fableman in this film, who is based on Steven Spielberg. This is based on his life, his childhood, his adolescence, his teenage years, learning to become a filmmaker and his journey towards that field. I think it's beautifully realized, and for someone like me with how much I love films and having passion just for the arts of it and for watching them and critiquing them, I really was glad that Spielberg made a movie like this. There were certain scenes here I was just so happy to see, just like, yes, you get it. This guy gets it. He gets my interest in this thing. So much so that it did actually have me wondering, this past holidays that have passed by when I was with my family, I was wondering, am I that disconnected from everyone? Is that why I'm so kind of shy and quiet and antisocial in a way? So needless to say, I was just happy that this movie was made, and it felt validating in a way to see through the lens of Spielberg when he was younger and see he was kind of going through the same thing as people like me are. At number 2, just barely missing number 1, is Pearl, the prequel to the film X, a film that I was excited to see just based off of that, knowing I would get to see more of this world. And I think it just about improves on everything that X did well. Better comedy, even better gore and horror. The score was a bit more standout as well. It takes place in the early 1900s, and it does fit that style of film and that era of films a little bit better. Some amazing award-worthy acting from Mia Goth in this movie as the title character Pearl. I still am shocked that this movie did not at least get her a Golden Globe nomination. I think that's really a big miss on their part. And an absolutely jaw-dropping conclusion. I am still so surprised at how this movie ends. It's freaking crazy. And finally, at number 1, it is, as you just saw, Everything Everywhere All at Once, directed by the Daniels. And yeah, this is just easily one of the most unique movies I've seen in a while, which I do somewhat hesitate to say that because this does play with the idea of there being different universes and different existences of each person in the world. And even if you haven't seen them, you're probably aware of Marvel and the multiverse and the whole concept of that thing. And it takes on all of this chaos and all of these possibly world-ending, life-ending scenarios, while at its core being about
family. There's
such a great sense of heart to this movie at its center, with the portrayal of the main family in here that I thought was just wonderful. Michelle Yeoh, Ke-Huy Quan, Stephanie Hsu, I thought were all terrific in their roles. I apologize, by the way, if I mispronounced any of those. So sorry if I did. And this movie just goes completely off the walls with regards to the concept and the themes explored here, putting in some science fiction elements, having some great comedy as well, but also a lot of great intense and suspenseful scenes. Some fantastic action, as you can expect from having a star like Michelle Yeoh here doing some great stunt work. And what's funny is that I still don't entirely get everything that happens here. It's one of those experiences where when I walked out thinking, I don't know everything that just happened. I can't make sense of every event that took place there. But I loved it, and I want to watch it again, and I want to watch it multiple times. I just want to keep watching it, and I still may not get it, but man, it's just such an engaging event. Sitting down to put this thing on and watch it and pay attention to it, it's unlike anything else I saw this year. And yeah, it's my favorite movie of this year. Definitely watch it if you haven't seen it. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Hopefully you got some good recommendations too, if there's anything here you haven't seen yet. And that is going to do it for my end of the year videos. I'm really tired of making these. I only filmed 2 videos today, but my mouth is so dry. I'm just ready to be done and start editing these. I am really looking forward to next year and to, watch some new movies, listen to some new music. I'm still going to keep making videos this year, or next year, I'm not going to stop. I'm not one to typically make New Year's goals, New Year's resolutions, but one thing I want to do in particular with movies and music is to just go into everything with the same amount of open-mindedness, which that is a word, if I know It's weird, but it is a word. And not just to be excited because it's, you know, I don't know, something by Radiohead and I like them a lot, so I'm gonna probably like it, or something by Spielberg and I'm a big fan of his, so I'll probably like it. But to just approach every new thing with the same mindset and, you know, just be ready to either like it or dislike it and just judge it fairly, you know, because sometimes the bias in my personal opinion of a certain artist or director can kind of get in the way of that initial experience taking that thing in. That was kind of a long-winded and complicated way to put it, but that is my goal for next year. And I am now done with this video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next year sometime. Peace out.